Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Okay, so I have a couple stories, but there's one main one that I will never forget. It will always freak me out. And it happened in my house when I was in high school. So I'll share the first story that led up to this main event, and then I'll talk about what really happened. So basically, I was in the 6th grade and I was having a sleepover with my friend, and I had no idea what a Ouija board was. No one's ever told me. This was early 2000s at this point. And I just wasn't educated on it. And so, of course, me being a 6th grader, thinking it was a board game, I'm like, yay, board game. Like, let's try something new. And so we were playing it. Nothing was really going on. Like, we were asking some silly questions like, oh, who am I going to marry when I'm older? And it wasn't really saying a whole lot. But looking back on it, something that kind of freaks me out is when we asked who we were talking to, it went to a Z. And I'm not going to talk any further on that. If you know, you know. And so we went upstairs to go get some, water, some snacks, stuff like that. My parents asked me, what are you guys doing downstairs? And we say, we're playing the Ouija board. And my parents are like, nope, absolutely not. You are not playing that. Please stop doing that. And so we went downstairs, we closed it up, and what followed after that freaked me out. So we heard some voices that night, nothing crazy, honestly. It wasn't like the super dramatic thing. But for years, I started hearing voices. I started seeing some things like people calling out my name in the middle of the night. I saw something in my closet, just like random things here and there. I vividly remember when I was younger, this was middle school now. I don't remember the exact time, but my siblings were, young, and we were home alone. My parents were traveling that day. And so they were coming back home. We were alone. Our babysitter had left. And we all, for some reason, looked down to the right. And so that's where our hallway was. And we had a really long extended hallway. And then our parents' doorway was facing where that hallway was. And so we all look over at the same time. It was the weirdest thing. And we see this man, like this really, really tall man standing there. And all of us say nothing. And we see this man turn and walk down the hallway. And so I look at them and I'm like, did you see that? And they're like, yeah. And I don't know what made us do this, but we went throughout the house and started trying to find if there was a man in the house. And if you've seen any horror movies, it's definitely not what you're supposed to do. Like, don't do that. But for some reason, that was, the mindset at the time. And we searched everywhere. Nothing was there, so there was no man. And we start moving on knowing that, we had just seen some random dude in our house and he disappeared. And so for years after that, nothing crazy really happened. Again, sometimes I'd hear somebody walking in the house when I was home alone or like in the middle of the night, but I just ignored it, tried not to give it any mind. But this is where the main event happens. So my brother passed away when I was in high school, and he lived in Tennessee with, my other family. My parents are, not together. So that side of the family, told me the news, and I went out and, flew out for the funeral. And so the day after the funeral, when I was flying home, my stepmom had lost her keys. And I went into her bathroom. She sets things in weird places. So she told me to look in her bathroom, look in her closet just to see if she dropped it, try to find, where the keys are so we can leave and go to breakfast together before I have to get on the plane. And I don't know what it was, but I felt such a difference in the air. Like the atmosphere went cold. I can't describe it. But if you've experienced something like this, it's a very eerie feeling. I felt like I was isolated, even though there were 3 other people in the house, but I was alone in that room. And all of a sudden I felt like metaphorically cornered in the closet and I heard my name being called with my brother's voice. And it's like time stopped. I knew it wasn't him because I thought that if it really was him, I wouldn't be freaked out. I wouldn't be feeling such a dark, gross feeling. Mind you, I'm already emotional because, I loved my brother and he had just passed away. And so hearing his voice was like weird and it was emotional for me. And I ran out of that room because I felt like whatever was talking to me was not him and it wasn't safe. So I ran out, and my stepmom had been calling for me for 10 minutes and I didn't hear her. So literally, it's like time had stopped. So I told them about this at breakfast and they're like, oh, I wish he would talk to me. And I'm like, but it wasn't him. Like, this is the weird thing. It wasn't him, right? And so I go home, months go by, nothing happens. I'm grieving my brother, I'm sad. And I talk to him sometimes, at that point. I still do, but, at this, during this story, I was talking to him sometimes, and whatever it was that talked to me at my stepmom's house followed me to my house in Minnesota. So I was in Tennessee. That's where the first event happened. I'm back in Minnesota at my mom's house where, the Ouija board thing had happened. We're keeping that in mind. So I go to bed one night. I'm the only one that lives upstairs, right? And so that's where the front door is. My bedroom at the time was right next to the front door. And so we had a staircase going downstairs, and that's where my parents and my siblings were. My mom would stay upstairs in the kitchen, dining room area until, sometimes later in the night, just getting projects done. She's a very crafty person. So I went to bed knowing that she was, kind of within the vicinity. I felt safe. And what I did was I always closed the doors and closed the blinds before I went to bed because, I had experienced some things. I was a little freaked out. And I had already some nights experienced sleep paralysis. And, I was already kind of on edge about that. So close all the blinds, close the doors. And I had my radio on and I start, kind of dozing off, and my radio sounds slower and distorted all of a sudden. And I'm like, something's about to happen. And it did. So I felt like I heard the doors opening, but I was like, no, I'm going crazy. There's nobody else that would be, but it was both doors, my closet door and my door to my bathroom that I heard opening. And I'm like, there's not two people in my room. There's no way. And I didn't even hear my room door open, the main door. And so I can't get up. It's like I am, I'm in sleep paralysis. I can't do anything. I can't talk. I can't open my eyes. I can't move. And all of a sudden I feel myself getting up and I'm like, this isn't me. This isn't me. And so I feel myself get out of bed, but I don't feel like I'm in control of my own body. And I feel myself reach my hand out for my door. And I feel the doorknob. I start, opening my door. And all of a sudden I hear my brother's voice come from my bathroom and him saying, Maddie, I need to talk to you. And I don't know how, but somehow, some way I was able to talk in that moment. And I'm like, no, get out. I know this isn't you. I don't want to hear it. And I don't know what it was, but it was like, okay, I'll leave. Okay, you'll leave. Okay. But here I am, kind of traumatized because, it's my brother's voice again. And I'm still grieving. This is only a couple months after he passed. And so I'm like, well, what if it was my brother? And I carried on that guilt for so long thinking well, what if it was him? But it was that creepy feeling again. And I'm like, you know what? If this was really my brother, there is no way that he would do this to me, that he would freak me out, that he would try to do all this stuff. There's just no way. I feel like he would come and try to peacefully talk to me and have a conversation. But, that's a whole other conversation. And so I opened my eyes, after I muster enough courage, I open my eyes and all my doors are open, all of them. And nobody was upstairs. My mom is already fast asleep at this point. It was midnight. And I know this story sounds crazy, but this really happened and it still freaks me out to this day. And I don't know. So I just wanted to answer this question right here because I've been asked a couple different times in the comment section about this specific thing. So this started when I was in 6th grade. I know I mentioned that before, but I was only 12 and I didn't have any education on any of this, and neither did my friend that brought it in. When we were discussing the sleepover originally that day, I remember her specifically telling me that it was like Candyland and that we should try it. So that's why I was okay with playing it. I had no idea that it involved any of this spiritual stuff. So after we were done playing it, we were, so freaked out by what my parents said that we just closed it, and then she brought it home and told me she threw it away. And her parents actually bought her that board game. So it was a little interesting. But anyway, I did see a lot of professionals after this. It is closed. The door is closed. But unfortunately, the portal in the house is still open. And I have had many discussions with people that deal with things like that. And things still happen, unfortunately, in that house. I can talk a little bit more about that if you're interested in hearing more stories and kind of what still goes on in the house today. I don't live there anymore. I am fully grown adult. I have my own house now. Nothing weird happens in my house. Nothing has followed me over there. So it is only at that house now. And it is attached now to something else. So like I said, again, I can talk more about that if you're interested in hearing more stories and me discussing that a little bit further. But yeah, the door is closed now. And for all those people saying I need Jesus or an exorcism, I was never possessed. I am a Christian. I did talk to a lot of pastors about this afterwards, many years down the road, and everything's fine. Like I said before, this happened 14 years ago with the incident with my brother, or the entity, as you could say. That's the last time I had an encounter like that with my brother. So, yeah.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So this is going to be my part 2 of the original video I made a few days ago about a Ouija board and the entity that I encountered after playing it. So just a disclaimer, if you have not watched that video and you aren't comfortable with conversation about those topics, you don't have to watch it. But I just want to warn you that I do mention it. I do not say the entity's name out of respect for myself and everyone watching. But if you are interested, you can go ahead and watch and come back to this one. So I had a few people in the comments ask me about making more videos about my paranormal experiences. And here is another one that also happened in high school a few years after that original encounter that I had discussed before. So I was in the 11th grade and we were rebuilding my house. So we all moved to a townhome nearby. And during the first couple weeks, everything was totally fine. I kind of felt like I was getting a break from everything that had happened at the house prior. And it was quite peaceful for a little bit. But all of a sudden, when I decided to do homeschooling for that year and take a little bit of a break from public school, I was home alone about 95% of the time. My parents worked full-time and my siblings went to school in person as well. So whenever I would be on the main level where the kitchen, the bathroom, and the radiator room was, I always felt like I was being watched all the time. I always felt like there was somebody standing right next to me or watching behind me. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. So I vividly remember one day I was going to meet a friend. I don't remember what we were doing, but I was getting ready and I always walked through the garage to get to my car. So as I was walking through, making sure all the doors were locked up and I was about to walk underneath the garage door, it slammed down almost on top of me. And I'm very glad that I caught that it was falling, or else I would have gotten very severely injured. So I went to my car after this whole thing and I'm like in shock because nothing has ever happened like that. And the garage door had seemed to be fine prior. So I was like, what the heck just happened, you know? And for some reason, I had an inkling to look up at my window to where my bedroom was. And I see a man standing there that I've never seen before, laughing at me. And as I'm looking at this man laughing at me, he all of a sudden disappears. And I was like, oh, heck no, I'm going away. Like, I sped away from the house so fast. I wanted nothing to do with that. Especially after all the stuff that I had already been through, there was no way I was dealing with that in that moment. So I left, and then I came back later that night when my family was already, dozing off. Everybody was in their rooms. So I came inside and I sat on the couch and I was going to watch some TV for a little bit and unwind. And from that area in the house where the radiator room was, I all of a sudden hear a voice saying my name. And this is exactly how they said it. They were like, Maddie, oh, Maddie, and just kept doing that. And it was not a voice that I recognized. It wasn't like a person that I knew. And I was like, nope, nope, this is like round 2. Absolutely not. So I ran upstairs, and as I'm running upstairs, I see a figure in the corner. I'm like, nope, I'm ignoring this. I'm sorry, no. So I went to my room and I went to sleep, and I felt a little bit more comfortable as I was going to sleep. But my mom, she woke up around 4 a.m. and she usually went downstairs to go do her devotionals before all of us would wake up in the morning, just to get, some time by herself. And she gets a weird, gross feeling all of a sudden. And she sees a figure in front of her, just standing there staring at her, almost like taunting her in a way with how it was trying to walk towards her. And at the same time that she was seeing this entity in front of her, I had a weird, gross dream. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen The Grudge. I've never personally seen it, but I know what the girl looks like, and I've seen, commercials and things like that. So I see her face show up in my dream, and it's gaping, and things are coming out of her mouth, and it was just so disgusting. And I remember waking up suddenly and not being able to fall back to sleep. I was just so terrified. And I wake up later, go downstairs, and I tell my mom about this dream. I'm like, Mom, this really creepy thing happened. I don't know what to do. And she's like, when did that happen? And I told her. She told me, at that same time, I saw an entity down here and I got rid of it. And it sounds like you woke up right as it went away. So that's something that I will never forget. Obviously, I still remember it now, and it freaks me out. But I've had multiple encounters like this, even recently. So if you want to hear more of those stories, I will share them. But that's another one that I will never forget. Let me know what you guys think. Hello, everyone. So I have seen in my comment section under some of my other videos that I have posted that you guys were interested in me sharing some more stories about my paranormal experiences. Since I have so many stories, I thought that I would make this into a series. So if you are interested in watching more of my story times, give me a follow if you'd like, and stay tuned because I will be doing these every week. Also, I have had some people private message me and ask me if I would be willing to share their stories, which I am open to that. So if you are interested, I will be taking submissions and I will give you credit. However, if you do want to stay anonymous, I will disclose that at the beginning of the story time. If you haven't watched my first video that I made of this series, you can go ahead and go to my profile and watch it if you're interested. I do want to give a disclaimer that I do discuss an experience with the Ouija board and a specific entity that I did encounter while playing. So if you're not comfortable with that, you definitely don't have to watch it, but it does kind of go into today's paranormal experience that we will be discussing. So I know I'm jumping timelines a little bit, but this is another experience that I had that absolutely still sits with me to this day. And I still wonder about what may have happened behind the scenes and if something did happen following what I'm about to tell you. So this will be an experience that I had with the same demonic entity from the first story time, and them threatening mine and my friend's life. So just to set the scene a little bit, I was in middle school for this one. And growing up, I always went to a summer camp with my family. And then I also went to kids camp by myself, just with my friends, you know, hanging out. And that year, I specifically had met a new person that I hadn't seen before. He was new to the area, had just moved with his family, and they wanted him to make some new friends. And I'm a really outgoing person. So, of course, me being me, I introduced myself and I made it my mission to be friends with this person because he was very shy. He kept to himself, and I wanted him to have a fun time at camp with all of us. So I ended up getting to know him throughout the week and learned a lot about him. We became very close and we began a really great friendship. So after I came back home from camp, I'd still been experiencing some interesting things around the house. And this time, my parents were doing some different things upstairs, including my room, kind of like remodeling and stuff like that, and redoing things. So I did sleep in the guest room that night, which happened to be downstairs. And this was close to the room that I had done all of this original stuff in with the Ouija board. So I remember that I heard something walking down that same hallway where I saw the man. Just for context. Don't know if it's the same one, but I'm just gonna say that out loud. So I heard footsteps, and it's almost like he was wearing chains, because I remember hearing chains. So he's walking down, and I hear him come to the foot of my bed, and I almost felt, I didn't see this, but I almost felt like something was leaning over me, and he said, "I'm gonna kill you and your friend." And I audibly, out loud, said, "What?" Because I was like, there's no way somebody's saying this to me. And he said my friend's name. And so I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to kill you and your friend." And I was like, "You need to get out of my room now." And I did speak the Lord's name over it. I just want to say that I am a Christian. So I did do that. He ended up leaving my room. And I heard him go back down the hallway. The crazy thing is I ended up telling my brother about this story years later. And he told me that that same night, he had heard a man come out of his room with chains, he felt like he was wearing, and walk down the hallway towards me. So if you've watched some of my other videos, my brother is sometimes included in them. And he was definitely included in this one. So nothing happened to him. They didn't, like, the entity didn't talk to him, but I've always wondered if something ever happened to my friend because I never heard from him again. And I don't know how he's doing or if he's even still around. I don't like to assume the worst, but that's just something that stuck with me for a very long time. It did freak me out, and I didn't know that entities would necessarily threaten to you, if you will. So let me know what you think about it. I would love to hear your thoughts. And let me know if you're interested in submitting anything. I'm always open to conversation. Thank you guys for listening to the story time.
Tell me about the weirdest dream you've had that you don't actually think was a dream.
I definitely have one of these stories. So I think I'll share it just because it was very encouraging to me and it really warmed my heart, and maybe it will help someone else out by hearing this story. So I just want to preface by saying that I have had many dreams in the past, and even still do have some where they seem very, very real, and they do end up happening in real time later down the road. So this is not the first time I've had an experience like this. Over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of conversations with doctors about my fertility. So this started a couple years ago when they found a tumor in my fallopian tube, and it was eating my ovary. So I ended up getting scheduled for surgery and had, a lot of very scary conversations about me not being able to have kids, the possibility that I might not be able to have them, and what my options are going forward when I do decide that I might want to have a family, if that is the route I want to go down in the future. So obviously this was very devastating for me. I still remember the day very clearly and how devastated I was. I called my family, I was crying, didn't understand, why this was happening. And also, I didn't see any signs that I had a tumor. Not that you always do, but it was just very shocking for me. So after I got the surgery, the doctor did tell me they were able to save my ovary and my fallopian tube. However, it would be very, very hard for me to have children, if at all, because they also found a lot of scarring around my reproductive organs, and they also found a lot of endometriosis. They were able to remove some of it, but it wasn't, cleared out completely. So we're just keeping that in mind with this story. Anyway, so fast forward a couple years later, I actually get pregnant. It was very unexpected, and mind you, I have in my mind that I probably can't have kids. So this is my rainbow baby. And I remember the day before I was supposed to have my ultrasound to find out the gender of the baby, I was very, very convinced at this point that I was having a boy. Not necessarily because of my symptoms, but mainly just because I just had like this weird feeling that it might be a boy, and people were always, also in my ear saying like, oh, it's going to be a boy. And, it gets to you, So I remember going to sleep that night and just being really excited for my ultrasound the next day, and me being able to finally think of like names and all that kind of stuff. I was just really trying to like soak up the whole experience, considering I'd, been grieving my fertility for years at this point. So that night I had a dream, and it was a very, very vivid dream about this little girl. She had these crazy blue eyes, very bright blue eyes, kind of like wavy, curlyish hair, very similar to my hair color. She was wearing a beautiful dress, and she was about a year old, and she kept calling me mommy. And I remember just smiling at her, and we were playing outside, and she was just smiling back at me. And it felt like the dream only lasted about 5 minutes, but when you're having dreams, it never feels like how long you're actually sleeping. So I wake up the next morning and immediately had this thought in my mind, like, I might be having a girl. So later that day, I go to my ultrasound, and they tell me that I'm having a baby girl. And I'm just kind of like, really? Like, am I? That's crazy. Like, I just had this crazy dream last night, and I really felt like that could have been like my own kid. Like, I just felt so much peace having that dream and then waking up the next morning. And, I knew her name. She had like told me her name in this dream. And this is so crazy, but after my daughter was born, she looked familiar to me, like very, very familiar. Like I had already seen her before. And now my daughter is around 19 months. And she's the little girl I had a dream about. I'm going to get emotional, I'm sorry, but she's the little girl I had a dream about. And I will never forget. For many years, I carried a lot of guilt, thinking that it may have been my brother trying to come to me and have a conversation. But it has since been communicated to me by him directly in a very peaceful way that it was not him in those encounters, and it was the smart choice to say no and tell that entity to go away. Here's the thing. There's a lot of different opinions surrounding this entity. I do understand that. However, in my specific situation, what I have experienced, it is not good. It is not safe. And it is definitely not something that you want to mess with. I can't change the past and what happened, but I can heed a warning to everybody to not go near a Ouija board. I don't care what you believe in. It's fine. Believe in what you want, but don't do it. Just don't. My opinion on the Ouija board is mess around and find out. That's exactly what happened to me. And guess what happened? Y'all saw the video. I was given a specific warning before posting that video. I had a vision of a man who came to me. He was in my home, my current home right now. He walked down the hallway, got in my face and said, "Do not post that video. I don't want you talking about what happened." Guess what I did? I talked about what happened. And now I am suffering some consequences from that. But guess what? I wanted everybody to know what can happen when you mess with things that you don't understand. Now, I can't control what y'all do or what you say, but if you keep commenting that entity's name in my comments, I will delete them, because even saying the name can be dangerous, and I really just don't want to deal with it, and I don't want other people to be put in a position where they have to deal with it. Anyway, if y'all have more questions about anything that's happened, any more experiences that I've had, I will be doing more story times. I have so many stories to share, but please stop saying the name. That is all I ask. All right, have a peaceful day. I am back with another paranormal story time for you guys. If you haven't seen my first story time that I posted, it is pinned on my profile if you are interested in watching that. It does kind of explain all of the nitty-gritty details that I get into with why I do experience a lot of paranormal things now. But long story short, I played with a Ouija board when I was in the 6th grade. I was 12 years old, and I have had a significant encounter with a specific entity that is very popular, if you will, when it comes to playing the Ouija board. I have had paranormal experiences before that, but I think that specific situation did exacerbate it and made it a little bit more dramatic, if you will. I do want to preface that I am really bad at recording these, and I'm also very bad at editing, and I jump timelines a lot, so forgive me. All right, now to what actually happened. So I will say that as I tell stories, it will not be consistent with timelines. I will say that. Here's why. Because I don't remember everything that happened all the time. It is very random when the memory comes back, and then I will share it as it comes. So I'm sorry if that bothers some of you, but that's just how my mind works. So this specific situation happened very shortly after my first encounter in the 6th grade. So I was still around 12, 13 years old, and I'd gone to sleep that night kind of feeling a lot of fear and feeling very unsettled, not knowing if something kind of negative was going to happen. Whenever I'd have those feelings, that's usually what would happen. So just to clarify, I had a very, very vivid dream that night. I still remember it clear as day. I will never forget it. So I was laying in my bed in this dream, just like I was in real life. And I heard a storm outside, and all of a sudden my roof came off of my house and started like spinning everywhere, but my room was intact. It was very odd. I knew I was dreaming. I knew this wasn't real life. And I heard a voice, a very, very evil voice, call out my name in this dream. And I did respond, knowing that whatever I was encountering was very, very evil. And he said, "There's gonna be a day where you." And I didn't know what to say. So I didn't really say anything. I got myself to wake up, but I woke up with a huge startling sound. This is what I heard once I woke up. Obviously, that is a very unsettling sound to wake up to, and I really thought there was somebody standing in my room clapping. Even though that sounds really ridiculous, I couldn't see anything, and I couldn't really equate it to anything else. What felt like probably 10 minutes of me just sitting there contemplating if I wanted to get up and potentially, not be on this earth anymore if I got up. Sounds dramatic, but that's how I felt. I turned my light on, and my entire ceiling was flooded. Mind you, at that point, we had had really no issues in the house, and there was no reason for my roof, like my ceiling, I should say, to be flooded that way. I don't know what that dream meant, or if there really was any sort of specific meaning behind it, I haven't really sought it out because it did freak me out so badly. If any of you guys have any idea of what it could mean, feel free to let me know. I'm open to suggestion, but it is something that has stayed in my mind for a long time. I've never forgotten that dream. And I've never forgotten that right when I woke up, my whole ceiling was flooded. If you've made it this far, that means that you've listened to the entire video. Thank you so much for coming by and watching and being interested in my paranormal videos. Let me know if you liked it, if you want to hear more, and I will see you hopefully in the next video.